Is this thing on? Are we rolling? Is this finally happening? When I tell you that I have been meaning to start a podcast for the majority part of the last 2 years, I'm saying an understatement. Because I have been wanting to do this for so long, and I have finally got the courage and the time and the, motivation as it starting off as a class to finally start it. So I welcome you and I appreciate anybody watching and or listening to Ryan Bowlin Presents Everything But Bowling. Now, obviously, there is an underlying meaning to the name. What the heck is that supposed to even mean? When I tell you the amount of times that people say Ryan Bowling when they introduce me, it's unbelievable. You know what? Let's just take a quick sec. I got 2 quick examples here. Let's just run them quick.
Now we bring you sports with Ryan Bowling.
SBU TV's Ryan Bowling tells us,
isn't that absurd? It is Bowlin. There ain't no G on that name. You see a G? B-O-W-L-I-N. It's not B-O-W-L-I-N-G. Come on, my dude. Anyways, let's just forget about that. That's the name. We're going to talk about everything here, excluding bowling, of course, just in spite of that mistake that people do. What do we got on tap for you? I posted it. We got a 12-part series detailing the misfortunes and heartbreaks of the Minnesota Vikings, Minnesota Twins, Minnesota Wild, Minnesota Timberwolves. Even the freaking soccer team had a mistake, heartbreaking defeat in their playoffs. We're going to touch it all. Half the episodes are going to be about the Minnesota Vikings because I can't even count on 2 hands how many misfortunes and heartbreaking losses they've had in their time. So we're going to get into all of it. I have Paul Allen to talk about all the Minnesota Vikings. Still to be determined who's going to talk about all the other sports, but we're going to get someone for you, and I can't even contain my excitement. Way too excited for this opportunity to bring you guys the best possible content. So what are we going to talk about today? It's pretty self-explanatory. Minnesota Vikings have made it to 4 Super Bowls in their time as a franchise. Guess how many they won? Just like the O in my name, 0. We have won 0 Super Bowls. You know how absurd that is? I mean, I know there's other teams in the NFL that don't have a Super Bowl win, and other teams that have made the Super Bowl multiple times and don't have a win. I mean, I'm in New York. Of course, the Buffalo Bills, they've also done it. They don't got a Super Bowl. They've been multiple times too. But we have been to the Super Bowl 4 times in such a short span. I mean, it could have been a dynasty. But instead, it's the exact opposite of a dynasty that team was. Not only do we have one of the best defensive lines in NFL history, I mean, they had a nickname, for God's sake. The Purple People Eaters. You don't hear that. Paul Allen's going to talk about it a little bit. Groups of players don't get nicknames anymore. Like, that's how special that group was. And the fact that they couldn't get a ring for the state of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul and all the Minnesota Viking fans around the country and the world, it's just so sad. It's so sad. I mean, we're just going to talk about it briefly. I mean, obviously, they're 0-4. They went to back-to-back in 74 and 75. They lost them both. Probably the most absurd stat. Not a single-digit loss. They're all double digits. They were all blowouts. In almost every game, I think they were over at halftime. As a Minnesota Viking fan in the 70s, you're probably watching the game like, might as well turn it off at halftime because we got no shot. Excluding one. We only lost by 10 points in the 75 Super Bowl. Bravo to that team. I mean, props to the team for getting to the Super Bowl, but you got to win one. You got to win one. 0-4, 0%. You're failing. You're going to have to redo. I mean, we haven't been at a Super Bowl in 44 years now. 44 full seasons. Granted, we've been close a couple times, but close but no cigar, as they say. I'm gonna talk about each and every Super Bowl with Paul Allen. So, without further ado, let's bring in what I think, in my personal opinion, the best radio play-by-play personality in the entire country for any sport, frankly. I mean, his passion, he is a true fan. He is the epitome of what a fan is. And he gets to showcase that on the radio, 9 to noon on his own personal radio show at K-Fan. And for all Minnesota Viking fans around the country, every Sunday, 12 o'clock Central Time. Obviously, it's 1 p.m. on the East Coast. But I mean, for the rest of my life, I will always be okay with listening to a Minnesota Viking games simply because he is the man on the call. Let's just bring him right in. The voice of the Minnesota Vikings, Mr. Paul Allen. PA, baby. Paul Allen, PA on the mic. Minnesota Vikings, the voice of. How are you doing today? Thanks so much for joining the pod.
What's going on, man?
So first thing I got on tap, we're 0-4 in Super Bowls. Now, obviously, there's no other way to put that. We had 4 times in the Super Bowl, and I think the most absurd thing is all of them are double-digit losses.
Like, one of those Super Bowls, man, they were favored by 12 points, one of the bigger favorites in the history of a Super Bowl, and they got killed.
Yeah, that was the 1970. They were favored by 10, I think, against the Chiefs, and they lost 23-7.
Oh my God. Well, the sad thing here is that they had so many good Hall of Fame type players on those teams, and they weren't able to get over the hump once, twice, up to 4 times. They were running into immortality like teams. And it is unbelievable that through those Super Bowls and then through 98, 2009, and all the playoff appearances that they've had here, that they have not been able to get back to a Super Bowl, let alone win one.
Yeah, it's been 44 seasons now, just since we've been there. Obviously, we came close, but we'll get to that a little later. Can't get over that one. But like even in the 1971, we only gave up 9.5 points per game on defense. And then we go out and give up 23 and we fall behind 16-0. Like, how does that even happen? Right.
Well, I mean, what do you want to do for a future? You want to work for Elias Sports Bureau? I mean, you're all in Stats Inc. or Spot Rack. You're all over these numbers. And again, with, Jim Marshall, Carl Eller, Larson, and then you get up to Studwell, Hall of Famer Paul Krause. I mean, some of these players they had defensively, Purple People Eaters, man. Nobody has nicknames anymore because in this day and age, you can't put a nickname on somebody because the new age kids are going to be like, well, no, I'm Paul Allen. I'm not going to have any nickname associated with me and diminish me on Insta or Snap or Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But back then, man, Purple People Eaters, Kenny the Snake Stabler, the Mean Joe Green and the Steel Curtain and so on. It had so much personality and so much immortality. The Vikings did too. They just couldn't push past. And there truly is no answer.
No, I mean, it's unreal. I mean, just other numbers that are just absurd is we're the second highest scoring offense in the 74 Super Bowl, and we're shut out through 3 quarters.
Mm-hmm. The 98 Vikings had the greatest offense in the history of the NFL.
Oh my God, we will get to that season.
The 2009 team ran up 500 some odd yards at Superdome, 500 some odd yards, and didn't win the game. So it's, then you get to the playoff games, man, and the kicker at the College Stadium, and you get the Minneapolis Miracle, and but that sapped everything out of everybody, and then they go to Philly and get killed. It's all stories are different, yet the same.
Yep, and it's more unfortunate too because I think every single one of those Super Bowl run seasons we started off like 5-0 or 6-0-1. It's like the hope was always there, and I think that goes for like every single Viking season. All the fans come together at the beginning, and we have so much hope, even though all the past, and then we just seem to get let down in the end.
Yeah, I mean, there's not every season. I mean, if you're realistic, then you can't possibly think they're going to go to the Super Bowl every season. And, in fact, coming into last year with the way some things developed with the virtual offseason, no preseason, I knew about Daniil's neck about a month before anybody else did. Michael Pierce had opted out. I didn't think they had much chance to get to the Super Bowl last year. Now this year, heading into this season, this one's going to be different. This is a big season for many reasons, but it's the fan base, and I know this from doing the radio show at KFan as long as I have, is they love no matter how good or bad this team is. And that's not the case with the Timberwolves. It is the case with the Twins. It's not the case with Gophers football or basketball. And it's kind of the case with the Wild. But this team, no matter if they're 2-14, people are going to be happy because they get to yell louder. And if they're 14-2, they're going to be happy because there's a chance. So the fan base, the people of Minnesota and the upper Midwest are smitten by the Minnesota Vikings and always have been.
Yeah, I agree completely. But hopefully we can get to another Super Bowl relatively soon.
We might go this year. Mark my words.
I have, like every other year, I mean, I got the hope.
I got the hope. I think it was absurd. This past year, we start the season so poorly and we still have a chance for the playoffs. But they always like to give us that little chance of.
They were never making the playoffs.
I know.
They were never making the playoffs. And this is not, when I do 9 to noon on KFAM, I just don't talk this way. But I just kind of knew in my heart they were never making the playoffs last year. There were just too many things to overcome. And having all those kids in the secondary, with no preseason and the virtual offseason, and then your pass rush is absurdly bad. And I understood why they moved on Unique Ngakoue, because Daniil's symptoms in August and September look better, but the MRI didn't. So now you got Ngakoue, who's all about a one-trick pony. You gave up a second. I understood it. I'm not mad at it, but stuff like that was happening, leading me to think, man, this just ain't the year.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough year. Hopefully, I'm as optimistic as you are for this upcoming year. I can't wait for the season to get going.
They're going to be good.
I know. I'm really excited.
Thank you so much, Paul Allen, for being on the show. We'll see him 5 more times throughout this 12 episode series, and I couldn't be more excited to talk to him a little bit more about the other heartbreaking Minnesota Vikings losses. And I didn't even experience these 4, the Super Bowls. I don't think I experienced the next one either, but the rest of them I personally, near and dear to my heart, as I watched them or just I felt so close to that team, and it's just the heartbreak. It can't even be described in words. But we'll get to those. I mean, just to talk a little bit more about these teams. The 1970 team, I touched on them a little bit. Paul wasn't too excited about all the stats and numbers I was throwing at him, but I'm a stats and numbers guy. Each and every season, the 1970 season, we're a 12-2 football team. We got the purple people eaters. We're down 16-0 at halftime. Turn the game off right there. There's no way we're coming back. We're not the New England Patriots coming back against the Atlanta Falcons. We're not that. This is 1970. This is a run era, and we just did absolutely nothing. Not only did we have a 12-game winning streak in that season, but in the biggest game of the season, you're going to turn it over 5 times? You got to protect the football. What are you doing, guys? What are you doing? And that team, 9.5 points per game on defense, I've never heard of a single-digit points per game against for a defense. I'm seeing it on my paper right now. I looked it up. It's a fact. It is exactly what happened in that 1969-70 season. But didn't see that team in the Super Bowl, did we now? They lost 23-7. 23-7. Didn't even score a single point in the first half. It's truly unbelievable. There's a CBS series that came out that detailed the 5 best teams without a Super Bowl in the history of the NFL. The Vikings show up twice on that list. There are 32 teams in the NFL, I might remind you. And I'm sure there's only so many teams, and there's only so many teams that, didn't win a Super Bowl that were really good. The Vikings are 2 of the 5 on that list. One of these teams is the 1970. They were 12-2. And then obviously the 98 Vikings team, which was absurdly godly. And we're going to talk about them a little bit later in the series, but just absurd. The 1974, Chuck Foreman, great running back for the Minnesota Vikings. That was his rookie year. We won the Rookie of the Year award. We go 12-2 that year. We fall behind 24-0 in that Super Bowl. What's up with the Vikings and getting to the Super Bowl and just not showing up to start the game? Play well. Is it so much to ask to score a point, a touchdown, a field goal? Obviously it's a lot to ask for Minnesota Vikings to make a field goal every once in a while, but for God's sake, it's kind of absurd, don't you think? Just get a touchdown, get a point, get in the game, be competitive. But they just can't. They couldn't ever seem to do that in the Super Bowl, and I can't wrap my mind around it. In the Vikings, we only gave up 12 points per game in that season, and we're giving up 24 points before the game. We didn't even score a touchdown. I might remind you in the first 3 quarters of that game. We had averaged over 20 points a game, which was the second highest in the entire league, and we didn't have a touchdown through 3 quarters. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? Someone tell me how that makes sense, because it doesn't. It doesn't. We just don't show up in the big games, and it's tough. And that was Fran Tarkenton, another great player in Minnesota Vikings history. He just didn't show up to play. 1975, we lost 16-6 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Terry Bradshaw year. I mean, we started 5-0 that year. We had the 3rd ranked offense in the entire NFL, and we're down 9-0. We just couldn't score the ball, and our defense just couldn't really come to play. Actually, the defense played well that game. They only gave up 16 points. Where was the offense? This was an offense that was 3rd ranked in the NFL, and they had no touchdowns in the game. No touchdowns or field goals, I might add you. In fact, their only points in that game, they ended up, that game was 16-6, was a blocked punt touchdown. And I assume with 6, they must have missed an extra point. Is that so surprising in Minnesota Vikings history? Probably not. I expect that, to be completely honest. Maybe they went for 2. I doubt they went for 2. It wouldn't make sense with the score. But, I mean, not even scoring an offensive touchdown in that game, they just don't show up for big games. It's absurd. In the last one, 1977, we start 6-0-1. We had the 6th ranked offense, the 6th ranked defense in the NFL, and we're down 19-0 at one point in the game. I mean, I assume after the 75, 74, and 70 Super Bowls, the fans that were watching in 77, probably watching the game down 19-0. Yeah. That makes sense. Let's watch the nightly news now. Why watch the Super Bowl anymore? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We were shut out in the first half of that game, obviously down 19-0 at one point in the game. You probably assume that. Are you surprised? I'm not. I mean, especially with the recent history of the Minnesota Vikings and all the things that have happened up to this point. Looking back at these Super Bowls and seeing how poorly we played in them, it doesn't surprise me one bit. It doesn't. It really doesn't. In fact, I mean, every single little thing that happens with the Vikings now that is poor, it doesn't surprise me. It just doesn't anymore. And I think that's sad. But I think what's even more sad is I'm an optimistic person. I think the fault of every Minnesota Vikings fan is we are all optimistic. And as a segue from that, the Minnesota Vikings, I am taping this on Wednesday night. The Minnesota Vikings just signed Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson, at one point in the league, one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, now on the Minnesota Vikings roster. And on a roster with so many young cornerbacks, adding a vet like him, I know Mike Zimmer was definitely pushing for that guy. He saw him on the market. He was like, I want him. And he got him. Only 1 year, I think $10 million. That's a steal. He is going to be so good on the Minnesota Vikings secondary, and he's just going to make everybody in front of him better. The linebackers, obviously, we got Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr. Barr is going to be back from his injury from last year. Obviously, on the D-line, if we can keep Danielle Hunter happy, we got one of the best young edge rushers in the entire NFL. We got, I know we signed the defensive tackle, who's an absolute beast. I think Pierce is coming back. Like, this is going to be a legitimately good, great Minnesota Vikings team. And as you heard Paul Allen say, mark his words, that team has a real shot at making the Super Bowl. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the first episode of Everything But Bowling for obvious reasons. As I mentioned, why the name is that it is what it is. Thanks for watching, and I hope you tune in for the next episode. See you around, guys.